pretty hot conversation, I must say. We're going to have our next contestant. Help me welcome C.J. Connard. C.J. Connard, my grandfather's grandfather, my grandfather's grandfather, C.J. Connard.
I never met my grandfather's grandfather, but I will never forget the stories he told me. He said to me, boy, he always called me boy, that my grandpappy was 7 foot 7 inches tall. He was a mountain of a man. He was as strong as a bear, and his name was John. I said, well, Grandpa, did you call him Big John? He said, no, boy, call him Grandpappy John. He said Grandpappy John lived up on the mountains in Tennessee Blue Ridges there with his wife and kids in a cabin. And he was a mountain man. He'd made his living hunting and trapping and fishing. But what was fascinating to me was he said he was quite an artist. And he used to carve the most lifelike figures you've ever seen. One spring after a particularly big rainstorm, the weeds was growing up pretty tall. So Grandpappy John just took his knife there, carved himself up a little billy goat, turned it loose, ate up all those weeds, nice and clean them out of the cabin. Of course, he had to tie it up at night so it wouldn't run off in the woods. Another time, he's sitting out in front of his cabin there, relaxing, carving on a piece of wood, and he saw this big eagle flying over the valley. He thought, you know, I've seen that eagle fly over every day, all by his lonesome. I'll bet he liked some company. So he got a big piece of wood, he carved a giant life-size eagle, put it up on the roof there, and sure enough, the next day, that eagle came flying over and spied that eagle on the roof and just zoomed right down to that roof, started eagle chirping, the eagle flirting. Those two fell in love and flew off together, raised a whole flock of eagles up in the Tennessee mountains there. Now, he would take his trapping furs and he would take his wood carvings and load them up in his wagon. About once a month, he'd take it down the mountain, go to the little trading post. And this particular time he was headed down there, he didn't quite feel up to pulling that wagon, so he got himself a big piece of wood, just carved himself a pony. Took that pony to the bridge and just had it pull that trailer right down the cabin point. When he got down to that trading post, he was unloading his goods, talking, and that fellow there at the trading post said, you know, John, I know you like gadgets. Now, even though he was a pretty simple mountain man, he did like gadgets. He said, well, what kind of gadgets are you talking about? He said, I got this newfangled thing here. It's called a vacuum cleaner. Of course, Grandpappy John said, I never heard of such a thing. What in tarnation's a vacuum cleaner? As well as this thing that you point it at something you want, you make it work, and it cleans it right up there. He said, I love the purpose. I said, well, what is it? He said, well, it's this long, skinny tube. It's got a wooden handle on it that you pull. It's got a little suction place at the bottom there. You've never seen something like that. Has anybody ever seen one of those vacuum cleaners? They're pretty rare. You don't see them very often. But I just happen to have one here with me. I'll show you what it looks like. Take this here vacuum cleaner and you just point it whatever you want and you just get a big old suck and pulls it right in. It's a labor-saving device. You can just imagine around the house how handy this is. Just cleaning up all that dust. Well, he took that home, showed his wife, said, look what I got here, honey. It's a labor-saving device. She said, what are you going to do with that thing? I'm not sure. Stuck it inside the cabinet, gave it a big old pull, sucked all the dirt right out of the house. Took it, pushed it right down, made a new mountain for the coach to play on. Another time he was sitting out there carving, and sure enough, his wife started hollering. He looked up in the field. She had stirred up a whole bunch of bees. They were chasing her out of the flowers in the field in the meadow. She came running back to the cabin and hollering, help me, help me. He just grabbed up that vacuum, pointed it right there at those bees, gave that handle pull, and whoosh, sucked all those bees right in there.
Oh,
but they had 10,000 bees buzzing around with that thing there, trying to get out. He thought, well, I can't just let these bees out there all riled up. So he took it over to his mountain still, poured a little bit of whiskey in there, kind of got them a little bit tipsy there, and they just sort of pushed them out one at a time, and they all staggered on back to that mountain meadow full of flowers. And they never bothered his wife again, either. But my favorite story about him and his vacuum cleaner was on a starry night, much like a night like this. He was laying on the meadow just looking at the universe and all the beautiful stars, thought the galaxy was just so spectacular. And he heard a voice say, excuse me there, John, could you help me out? He said, well, sure, what can I do? He looked, it was the janitor of the universe. He said, well, I got to do a little cleaning up here in the universe. I wonder if you could do me a favor here and just scoop all those stars out of the way while I sweep up. Sure, I'll do that. And he got an idea. He grabbed his vacuum cleaner, pointed it right up there, and just sucked all the stars of the universe right out of the sky, that vacuum cleaner. Well, it didn't take any time at all for the janitor was done. He said, I'm done. You can put them back. But being a bit of an artist, Grandpappy John didn't want to just put them up in the sky willy-nilly. he held that up in the sky. He swirled around once, and he swirled around twice. About the third time he swirled around, he just pushed that back out, spun himself in a great big circle, and shot out the most beautiful spiral galaxy you've ever seen in the world. In fact, that spiral galaxy is what we call the Milky Way, and I hope you enjoy it.